Please don't shoot. I will cooperate. I will cooperate. Voiced.
The gun was already pointed at her father when Natasha realized the man forcing her to sign the marriage contract wasn't a stranger. He was the boy who had bullied her in high school. 10 years later, he wasn't laughing anymore. He was a Korean Mafia heir, and he was claiming her as his wife. What terrified her most wasn't the gun. It was the way his eyes softened when he looked at her. If you love dark romance where enemies become something far more dangerous, stay with me, because this marriage was never supposed to turn into love. Subscribe for more intense stories like this, share it with someone who loves dark romance, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I read every single one. Sign it now, or I put a bullet in your father's head. The words hung in the air like poison, and Naya stared at the marriage certificate on the glossy mahogany table. Her pen hovered above the signature line, her entire body frozen between impossible choices. The loss. Angela's skyline glittered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of this cold, modern penthouse that smelled of expensive cologne and danger. 20 people watched her, 20 strangers in dark suits with faces carved from stone. "Naya, please," her father whispered beside her, his voice hollow. The man who had raised her with stories of Kenyan warriors and pride now stood broken, his shoulders curved inward like a question mark. She picked up the gold pen, its weight unfamiliar in her fingers. This wasn't how life was supposed to go. She was 24, working at a boutique advertising agency, living her dream in California. 3 days ago, everything had been normal. Then men in black cars had appeared at their apartment. Her father's gambling debts, borrowed money from the wrong people, numbers that made her head spin. $2 million. The debt had a face now. It stood across the table watching her with eyes darker than midnight. Seungmin Park, even his name sounded dangerous. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her car, his black hair styled perfectly, his jaw sharp enough to cut glass. He was handsome in the way poisonous things often were, beautiful and deadly, but it was his eyes that made ice crawl down her spine. Those eyes. Naya's hand froze above the paper, her vision blurred, then sharpened with sudden terrible clarity. She knew those eyes, the sharp angle of that nose, the cruel curve of that mouth. Westbridge International School. 10 years ago, a skinny Korean boy with a mean streak and a talent for making her life miserable. Her throat closed. It couldn't be. Life wasn't that cruel. But as she stared at him, recognition flickered across his face too. Something shifted in his expression, so quick she almost missed it. His eyes narrowed slightly, scanning her face, her hair, her features. She watched the exact moment memory clicked into place behind those dark eyes. "You," she breathed. The room fell silent. "Do you two know each other?" An older Korean man with silver hair and cold authority spoke from the corner. He had to be the father, the real crime boss. Everything about him screamed power. "No," Seungmin said smoothly, his voice deeper than she remembered, polished like expensive marble. "Sign the document, we're wasting time." Liar. He remembered. She could see it in the way his fingers tightened almost invisibly against his palm. This was the boy who had dumped her lunch tray in front of the entire cafeteria, who had spread rumors that she smelled like wild animals because she was from Africa, who had laughed when she cried after he told everyone her presentation on Kenyan culture was stupid and boring, and now she was supposed to marry him. "Naya, please," her father whispered. "They'll kill us both if you don't." Her hand moved. The pen touched paper. Her signature appeared in shaky letters that looked nothing like her usual confident script. Beside it, Seungmin's signature flowed in, bold, decisive strokes. The silver-haired man smiled. "Excellent. The debt is cleared. Seungmin, she's your responsibility now. Teach her how things work in our world." Our world, as if she'd asked to enter it. An older woman in an elegant navy dress appeared with a small box. Inside lay a wedding ring, a platinum band with a single diamond that caught the light and threw tiny rainbows across the walls. Beautiful and cold, just like everything else here. Seungmin took the ring and moved around the table. Naya wanted to run, to scream, to wake up from this nightmare, but her father's terrified face kept her rooted in place. Seungmin stood before her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive with notes of cedar and danger. He took her left hand. His fingers were warm, surprisingly gentle. That made it worse somehow. "Look at me," he commanded softly. She forced her eyes upward. His face was unreadable, a perfect mask. Nothing remained of the cruel boy from her memories, yet everything did. He was that boy grown into something far more dangerous. He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Of course it did. These people planned everything. "You may kiss your bride," someone said, and Naya's stomach dropped. Seungmin's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb resting against her cheekbone. His eyes held hers, and for just a second, something flickered there. Regret? Recognition? Hatred? She couldn't tell. His lips touched hers, brief, controlled, completely impersonal. Yet electricity shot through her body, unwanted and shocking. She jerked back, and his hand fell away. "Welcome to the family, Mrs. Park," the silver-haired man announced. Champagne corks popped. People applauded. Her father looked like he might be sick. Naya stood frozen as the world tilted around her. Mrs. Park. She was married. To her childhood bully. To a criminal. To a stranger who wore the face of her worst memories. The celebration, if it could be called. That lasted another hour. Naya stood beside Seungmin like a statue, while people congratulated them in Korean and English. He barely spoke to her, his attention on the various crime family members who came to pay respects. She learned quickly that everyone feared him. Grown men looked nervous when he glanced their way. Women smiled too brightly, trying too hard. Finally, the older man, Seungmin's father, announced the party was over. People filtered out efficiently, professionally. Her own father approached, his eyes red. "I'm sorry, baby girl," he whispered, hugging her tight. "I'm so sorry. I'll fix this somehow." "How?" The word came out broken. He had no answer. Security escorted him out, and then Naya was alone with her new husband in the massive penthouse. Seungmin loosened his tie, poured himself whiskey from a crystal decanter, and walked to the windows overlooking the city. He said nothing. "I know you remember me," Naya said, her voice stronger than she felt. "Westbridge. International. You made my life hell for 2 years." He took a long drink, still not turning around. "That was a long time ago." "Not long enough." She moved closer, anger overriding fear. "You called me horrible names. You made everyone laugh at me. You made me hate going to school." Finally, he turned. His face remained expressionless, but something flickered in his eyes. "You were an easy target, sensitive, emotional, weak." The words hit like physical blows. "And now you get to own me? Is that it? Some kind of sick revenge because I existed near you? Don't flatter yourself." His voice was ice. "This is business. Your father owed money he couldn't pay. In our world, debts get settled one way or another. You're a transaction, nothing more." "I'm a person," she shot back. "You're my wife. There's a difference." He set down his glass and moved past her toward a hallway. "Your bedroom is the third door on the left. Stay out of my office, the master bedroom, and the east wing. Don't leave the penthouse without my permission. Don't contact your friends. Someone will bring you clothes tomorrow." "You can't keep me prisoner." He stopped, looking back over his shoulder. "I can do whatever I want. That's what you signed up for." "I didn't sign up for anything. I was forced." "Welcome to my world, Naya." Her name on his lips sounded strange, intimate despite the coldness. Nothing here happens by choice. He disappeared down the hallway, and she heard a door close with finality. Naya stood alone in the enormous living room with its modern furniture and city views. The ring on her finger felt heavy as a chain. She twisted it, but it wouldn't come off. Panic clawed at her chest. She was married to Seungmin Park, to the boy who had tormented her, to a dangerous man in a world of criminals and violence, and somewhere in his cold eyes, she'd seen recognition. He remembered exactly who she was, which meant this wasn't random at all. Morning light sliced through the unfamiliar windows and pulled Natasha from restless sleep. For 3 beautiful seconds, she forgot where she was. Then the platinum ring caught the sun, and reality crashed down like a wave. She was married to Seungmin Park, in a penthouse prison 40 stories above Los Angeles. The bedroom he'd assigned her was larger than her entire previous apartment, decorated in shades of cream and gold that probably looked elegant to someone who cared. To Natasha, it felt like a gilded cage. She'd spent half the night testing the windows, all locked. The door to the hallway opened, but armed guards stood by the elevator. She'd counted 3 cameras in the living room alone. Her phone was gone. Taken while she slept, she realized, checking the nightstand where she'd left it. Rage burned through the exhaustion. She pulled on yesterday's dress, refusing to wear whatever clothes he planned to provide, and marched out to find him. The penthouse sprawled in every direction. She passed a kitchen, big, enough for a restaurant, a dining room with a table that could seat 20, a living area with artwork that probably cost more than most houses. Everything screamed money and power and complete lack of warmth. She found him in a glass-walled office, seated behind a sleek desk, typing on a laptop. He changed into black pants and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing surprisingly muscular forearms. He didn't look up when she entered. "Where's my phone?" Natasha demanded. "Destroyed." The casual way he said it made her want to throw something at his head. "You can't just destroy my property." "I can. I did." His fingers continued flying across the keyboard. "You don't need it anymore." "I have a job, friends, a life." Had. Now he looked up, his dark eyes meeting hers with that same unsettling intensity from yesterday. "You quit your job yesterday. Text message. Very polite. And your friends receive messages saying you're taking time away to deal with family issues." Horror washed through her. "You pretended to be me? One of my people handled it. Very convincing, apparently. Your boss wished you well." Natasha's hands curled into fists. "This is kidnapping. This is marriage. You signed the papers willingly, with a gun to my father's head. Metaphorically speaking." He closed the laptop and leaned back in his chair, studying her like she was a puzzle he couldn't quite figure out. "You should eat breakfast. Someone left food in the kitchen. I'm not hungry. Suit yourself." He stood, buttoning his shirt cuffs with efficient movements. "I have a meeting downtown. You'll stay here. Don't cause problems for the guards. They have orders to keep you safe and inside, in that order." He moved toward the door, and something inside Natasha snapped. She stepped into his path, blocking him. "Why me?" "Excuse me? My father owed money to your family. Fine. But there are 1,000 ways to collect debts. Why marriage? Why specifically me?" Something flickered across his perfect mask, so quick she almost missed it. "You think you're special? I think you recognized me yesterday. I saw it in your face. You knew exactly who I was." Seungmin's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "You're imagining things." "Am I?" She stepped closer, close enough to see tiny flecks of gold in his dark eyes. "Westbridge International School. You tortured me for 2 years, and now, coincidentally, when my father owes your family money, you demand me as payment? That's not random." "Careful," he said softly, and the warning in his voice made her spine straighten. "You're asking questions you don't want answered. Try me." For a long moment they stood there, inches apart, locked in a silent battle of wills. Natasha refused to back down, even as her heart hammered against her ribs. She'd spent years being afraid of people like him, years making herself small and safe, but she was done with that. "Fine." Seungmin's voice dropped lower, more dangerous. "You want the truth? Yes, I knew who you were. When your father's debt came across my desk, I saw your name on his emergency contact form, Natasha Omondi. I remembered that name, so I made sure the marriage arrangement specified you." The confirmation hit like a punch, even though she'd suspected it. Why? Because I could. His eyes held hers, cold and unreadable. Because in my world, I take what I want, and I wanted you here. To torture me again? To finish what you started in high school? Something cracked in his expression. His hand came up, stopping just short of touching her face. She saw him catch himself, saw confusion flash across his features before the mask slammed back into place. "Get out of my way," he said. "No." "Natasha." Her name sounded different now, almost strained. "Move. Make me." It happened fast. His hands gripped her waist and lifted her aside like she weighed nothing. But instead of setting her down and leaving, he kept holding her there, suspended. Her feet inches off the ground. Their faces were level now, his eyes boring into hers. "You think you know me," he said quietly. "You think I'm still that stupid kid from high school? I'm not. I've done things that would give you nightmares. I've hurt people in ways you can't imagine, and I will break you if you keep pushing. Then why haven't you?" The words came out breathless. "I've been here 12 hours. You could have hurt me a dozen times already, but you gave me my own room. You haven't touched me except to slide on that ring. For someone who claims to be a monster, you're doing a terrible job proving it." His grip tightened on her waist, his fingers pressing into her sides through the thin fabric of her dress. "You don't know what I'm capable of. Show me then." The words hung between them, a challenge and something else entirely. Natasha felt her pulse racing, felt the heat of his hands burning through her dress, felt something shift in the air between them. Seung-min's eyes dropped to her lips, just for a second. Then he set her down abruptly and stepped back. "My meeting," he said, his voice rough. "We'll continue this later." He left before she could respond, and Natasha stood there breathing hard, her waist still tingling where his hands had been. The day crawled by. Natasha explored every inch of the penthouse she was allowed to access. She found a library with books in multiple languages, a gym with equipment that looked unused, a terrace garden she couldn't reach because the door required a code. The guards ignored her completely, stone-faced men who watched her movements but never spoke. She found ingredients in the kitchen and cooked nyama choma, the Kenyan roasted meat dish her mother used to make before cancer took her 5 years ago. The familiar spices filled the penthouse, and for a moment Natasha felt less alone. Seung-min returned after dark. She heard the elevator, heard low voices in Korean, heard his footsteps approaching the kitchen where she sat eating. He stopped in the doorway, loosening his tie. His eyes traveled from her face to the plate of food, and his expression shifted to something she couldn't read. "That smell," he said quietly. "Kenyan food." She took another bite, not looking at him. "Want some?" "No." But he didn't leave. He moved into the kitchen, poured water from the refrigerator, leaned against the counter watching her. The silence stretched. "You remember me from high school," Natasha said finally. "But you never told me why you did those things, why you made me your target." Seung-min drank his water slowly. When he spoke, his voice was different, less controlled. "My father sent me to that school to learn English, to make connections with international families. I hated it. Hated being away from Korea, hated the other students, hated pretending to be normal when I knew what waited for me at home." "So you took it out on me?" "You were different. You didn't try to impress anyone. You just existed in your own world, confident in who you were. It made me angry." He set down the glass. "You had something I didn't. Freedom, choice, a future that wasn't written in blood." Natasha stared at him. "That's not an excuse." "I know." He met her eyes. "I was cruel because I was empty, because hurting you made me feel something other than nothing. It was wrong, but I can't take it back." The admission shocked her into silence. She'd expected denials, excuses, more coldness, not this raw honesty. "Why did you really bring me here?" she asked. The truth this time. Seung-min moved closer, stopping on the other side of the kitchen island. "Because when I saw your name on that paper, I realized I'd been looking for you. Not consciously, maybe, but some part of me never forgot, and I wanted a second chance." "A second chance at what?" at not being a monster. His voice dropped. At being something other than what my father made me. Natasha's chest tightened. She wanted to stay angry, wanted to hate him, but the vulnerability in his eyes made that harder. You're still keeping me prisoner, she pointed out. Yes. You destroyed my phone, cut me off from everyone I know. Yes. You forced me into a marriage I didn't want. Yes. He circled the island, moving closer. I did all those things. Because in my world, that's how you keep things you value. You lock them down. You control them. You make sure they can't leave. I'm not a thing. I know. He stood before her now, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. But I don't know any other way to do this. Do what? His hand came up slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His fingers touched her cheek, gentle despite the calluses she felt there. Make you stay long enough to see who I could be with you. Natasha's breath caught. That's not how this works. You can't kidnap someone and expect them to fall for you. I know that too. His thumb traced her cheekbone. But I'm hoping you'll give me time to figure out a better way. She should pull away, should slap his hand off her face, should maintain her anger and hatred because those emotions were safe, were justified. But his touch was gentle, and his eyes held something that looked like hope. I haven't forgiven you, she whispered. For high school, for this, for any of it. Good. His voice was rough. Don't forgive me yet. Make me earn it. The tension between them pulled tight as a wire. Natasha felt her pulse hammering, felt heat spreading through her body from where his hand touched her face. This was wrong. He was her captor, her childhood bully, a criminal. But he was also looking at her like she was the only real thing in his world. The moment shattered when his phone buzzed. Seung-min's hand dropped and he stepped back, pulling out the device. His expression hardened as he read the screen. Problem? Natasha asked. Always. He typed a quick response. I have to go out again. Business that can't wait. At 9 at night? His eyes met hers, and she saw the truth there. This wasn't business like board meetings and contracts. This was the other kind, the dangerous kind. Don't wait up, he said, already heading for the door. Seung-min. He paused, looking back. Be careful, she said, surprising herself. Something softened in his face. Why do you care? I don't. But they both knew it was a lie. The gunshot came from outside the ballroom. Natasha froze, champagne glass halfway to her lips as screams erupted around her. The charity gala had been boring, filled with rich people pretending to care about causes while showing off their wealth. Seung-min had insisted she attend, had given her a stunning emerald dress and diamond earrings, had introduced her as his wife to dozens of people who looked at her with curiosity and barely hidden suspicion. Now those same people were running, pushing toward exits, faces twisted with panic. Another shot, closer. Glass. Exploded somewhere across the ballroom. Seung-min appeared from nowhere, his hand gripping her wrist hard enough to bruise. With me, now. He pulled her toward a side door, his body positioned between her and the main ballroom. Two of his guards flanked them, weapons drawn. Natasha's heart hammered against her ribs as they burst into a service corridor. What's happening? She gasped. The Zhao family. They're making a move. His voice was clipped, professional, completely different from the man who'd touched her face in the kitchen 2 weeks ago. Stay close to me. They rushed down the corridor, Seung-min's grip never loosening. Behind them, Natasha heard shouting in multiple languages, more gunfire, the chaos of violence erupting in a place that had been civilized moments before. The corridor ended at a stairwell. As they reached it, a door above them slammed open. Men in dark clothes poured down the stairs, and Natasha saw the guns in their hands. Down, Seung-min commanded, pushing her behind him. His guards opened fire. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. Natasha pressed herself against the wall, hands over her ears, watching as Seung-min moved with terrifying efficiency. He wasn't just standing there letting his guards do the work. He had a gun, too, drawn from somewhere inside his jacket, and he used it with the casual expertise of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Men fell. Blood splattered the concrete walls, and Seung-min never flinched. "Move!" he barked, grabbing Natasha again. They went up instead of down, taking stairs 2 at a time. Natasha's heels made it difficult, and she stumbled. Seung-min caught her, then swept her into his arms without breaking stride, carrying her like she weighed nothing. "I can run," she protested, "not fast enough." They emerged onto the roof. Cold night air hit Natasha's face as Seung-min set her down. A helicopter waited, rotors already spinning. His guards formed a protective circle as they ran. For it, they almost made it. The rooftop door burst open. More men, more guns. This time they were faster. Natasha felt Seung-min jerk, heard him grunt. He stumbled and warmth splattered across her bare shoulder. Blood. His blood. "No," she breathed. But he kept moving, kept pushing her toward the helicopter even as red spread across his white shirt. They fell into the aircraft together, his guards piling in after them. The helicopter lifted immediately, bullets pinging off the metal sides. "You're shot," Natasha said, her hands going to his chest automatically. The wound was high on his left shoulder, blood pulsing between her fingers when she pressed down. "You're shot. We need to get you to a hospital." "No hospital." Seung-min's face was pale but determined. "Too many questions. My doctor. Call my doctor." One of the guards was already on the phone, speaking rapid Korean. Natasha kept pressure on the wound, her emerald dress now soaked in Seung-min's blood. He'd been shot because he'd stood between her and the bullets, because he'd protected her instead of himself. "You're an idiot," she said, blinking back tears she didn't want to shed. He smiled weakly. "You're welcome." The helicopter landed on the penthouse roof 20 minutes later. Seung-min's doctor was already there, a stern-faced older woman who took one look at the wound and started barking orders in Korean. They got him inside, onto the dining room table because it was closest, and Natasha found herself pushed aside as the doctor worked. But Seung-min's hand shot out, catching hers. "Stay." So she stayed, holding his hand while the doctor cut away his bloody shirt, cleaned the wound, extracted the bullet with tools that made Natasha's stomach turn. He didn't make a sound, just gripped her hand harder when the pain got worse, his eyes fixed on her face. "The bullet went through the muscle," the doctor said in accented English. "No major damage. He was lucky. Few inches lower, and it would have hit his lung. Lucky." Natasha looked at the man on the table, his perfect skin now violated by violence, and thought about how that bullet had been meant for her. The doctor stitched and bandaged, gave Seung-min pills for pain and infection, then packed up her supplies. "Rest for 3 days. No strenuous activity for a week. I'll check the wound in 2 days." Then she was gone, and Natasha was alone with Seung-min in the too-quiet penthouse. "You should sleep," she said, still holding his hand. "In a minute." He sat up slowly, wincing. "Are you hurt?" "Me? No. You're the one who got shot. Because of you." He said it matter-of-factly, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "They were targeting you to get to me. They knew I'd protect you." "Why would they know that?" His eyes met hers. "Because everyone knows. I've made it very clear that anyone who touches my wife answers to me." The word wife sent a strange flutter through her chest. 3 weeks ago, it had been a chain. Now it felt like something else entirely. "Can you walk?" she asked. "You need to lie down properly." "Help me." She slid an arm around his waist, careful of the bandaged shoulder, and helped him to his feet. He was heavier than she expected, his weight pressing against her as they made their slow way to the master bedroom, the room she'd never entered before. It was surprisingly sparse. A massive bed, dark furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the glittering city. Nothing personal. No photos, no decorations, just expensive emptiness. Natasha helped him sit on the bed, then knelt to remove his shoes. When she looked up, he was watching her with an expression that made her breath catch. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "You took a bullet for me. Let me take off your shoes." She removed them, then the ruined pants the doctor had cut away at the seams. He sat there in black boxer briefs and bandages, somehow still intimidating despite being injured. Natasha pulled back the covers, helped him lie down, then moved to leave. His hand caught hers again. Stay. Seung-min, please. The word sounded foreign in his mouth, like he rarely used it. Just for a while, until the pain medication kicks in. She should leave, should maintain the distance she'd been carefully building. But he looked vulnerable for the first time since she'd met him, and she found herself sitting on the edge of the bed instead. "Why did you do it?" she asked. "You could have let your guards handle it, could have gotten yourself to safety. Why did you shield me?" "You know why. I want to hear you say it." Seung-min's good hand came up, his fingers threading through hers. "Because the thought of you getting hurt makes me feel things I didn't know I could feel anymore. Because in the 3 weeks you've been here, you've made this empty penthouse feel less like a prison. Because when I look at you, I remember what it's like to want something other than power and control." Natasha's throat tightened. "You're saying this because of the pain medication." "I'm saying this because I almost died tonight and I'm done lying." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "I brought you here for selfish reasons. I wanted to prove something, though I'm still not sure what. But somewhere between your anger and your strength and your refusal to be afraid of me, I started falling for you. You can't fall for someone you're keeping prisoner. Watch me." He tugged her hand gently. "Lie down. Just for a minute." It was a bad idea. Terrible, actually. But Natasha found herself lying beside him on top of the covers, their hands still linked between them. His eyes were starting to glaze from the medication, but they stayed fixed on her face. "You're beautiful," he murmured. "I should have told you that in high school instead of being cruel. You were a kid. I was a coward." His words were getting slower, heavier. "But I'm not anymore. I'll prove it to you, Natasha. Every day I'll prove I'm not that boy." "Rest now," she whispered. "We'll talk when you wake up." His eyes drifted closed. Within minutes, his breathing evened out into sleep. Natasha should have left then, should have returned to her own room. But she stayed, watching the rise and fall of his bandaged chest, thinking about how he'd stepped in front of a bullet without hesitation. In the dim light, with his face relaxed in sleep, he looked younger, less dangerous, almost peaceful. Her free hand moved before she could stop it, brushing hair back from his forehead. His skin was warm, slightly damp with sweat from the pain and medication. He didn't wake, just made a soft sound and seemed to lean into her touch. "What am I doing?" Natasha whispered to herself. But she knew. Somewhere between the forced marriage and the shared meals and the quiet conversations in the kitchen, something had shifted. She was starting to see past the monster everyone else saw, starting to see the broken boy who'd grown into a dangerous man who'd never learned how to be anything else, starting to care about him despite every reason not to. She stayed there for an hour, maybe 2, before exhaustion pulled her under. She fell asleep, still holding his hand, still lying beside him on top of the covers, still wearing her blood-stained emerald dress. When she woke near dawn, she found herself tucked under the covers, her dress replaced with one of his shirts, her head on his good shoulder. His arm was wrapped around her, holding her close even in sleep. And for the first time since this nightmare began, Natasha didn't want to run. Natasha woke alone in the master bedroom, morning light painting golden squares across unfamiliar sheets. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then memory flooded back. The gala, the shooting, Seung-min taking a bullet meant for her. She sat up quickly, looking for him. The bathroom door stood open, steam drifting out. Through the doorway, she could see him at the mirror, shirtless, carefully changing his bandage with one hand. The injury made the movements awkward, and she watched him wince as he tried to tape down the gauze. "You should have woken me," she said, sliding out of bed. "Let me help." He looked at her reflection in the mirror, something soft crossing his features before the mask returned. "I can manage." "Obviously not." She crossed to him, taking the medical tape from his hand. Sit. He sat on the edge of the bathtub without argument, a sign of how much the wound actually hurt. Natasha carefully peeled away the half-attached bandage and examined the stitches underneath. The wound looked clean, no signs of infection, just angry and red and painful. The doctor did good work, she said, applying fresh gauze with gentle fingers. She's been patching up my family for 20 years. His voice was quiet, his eyes on her face as she worked. She's seen worse than this. The casual way he said it made Natasha's stomach tighten. This was his normal. Getting shot, getting patched up, going back out to do it all again. Does it hurt? She asked. Yes. At least he was honest. She finished taping the bandage and stepped back. He stood, and suddenly they were very close in the small bathroom, the mirror behind him fogging with steam. Thank you, he said. For what? For staying last night. For not running when you had the chance. Natasha's breath caught. When did I have a chance? When I was unconscious from the medication. The guards were dealing with security at the building. You could have walked out the front door. His hand came up, touching her cheek with that same gentleness that always surprised her. But you stayed. You were hurt. That's not why you stayed. He was right, and they both knew it. Something had shifted between them. Some invisible line crossed in the moment he'd taken that bullet. Natasha found herself leaning into his touch instead of pulling away. Sung Min, she started but didn't know how to finish. He solved the problem by kissing her. Not like at the forced wedding, brief and impersonal. This was real, his lips moving against hers with barely restrained hunger. His good arm circled her waist, pulling her closer, and Natasha's hands came up to his chest, feeling the heat of his skin, the rapid beating of his heart. The kiss deepened. His tongue traced her lower lip and she opened for him, tasting mint and something uniquely him. Heat pooled low in her belly, and she pressed closer, careful of his injured shoulder. He made a low sound that was part pleasure, part pain, and she pulled back immediately. Sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you. You didn't. His voice was rough, his eyes dark with desire. But we should stop before I do something my doctor would disapprove of. Natasha laughed shakily, pressing her forehead against his good shoulder. This is crazy. A month ago, I hated you. You still should. His hand tangled in her hair. I've done terrible things, Natasha, things you don't know about. Tell me then. He pulled back to look at her. Why? So you can confirm I'm a monster. So I can decide for myself what you are. For a long moment, he just looked at her. Then he took her hand and led her back to the bedroom, sitting on the bed and pulling her down beside him. My father runs one of the largest Korean crime organizations in the United States, he began. I've been part of it since I was 16. I've extorted money from businesses. I've hurt people who crossed us. I've done things that would make you look at me differently. Have you killed anyone? The question came out steadier than she felt. Yes. The single word hung between them. Natasha's first instinct was to pull away, to run from this confession, but she forced herself to stay, to really look at him. His face was carefully blank, but she saw tension in his shoulders, saw the way his jaw clenched. People who deserved it, he continued. People who hurt innocents, who broke our code, but that doesn't make it better, does it? Dead is dead. Are you telling me this to push me away? I'm telling you so you know what you're getting into if you stay. If. She turned the word over. Am I allowed to leave now? His hand tightened on hers. I don't know. Before, I would have said no. I would have locked you down tighter, made sure you couldn't escape. But now, the thought of you staying because you have to makes me sick. Natasha's heart hammered. This was it. The opening she'd been waiting for. She could demand he let her go, could walk out that door, return to her old life. Forget this nightmare ever happened. But would it be a nightmare she'd want to forget? I'm not saying I'm staying, she said carefully, but I'm not saying I'm leaving either. I just need time to figure out what this is between us. Relief flooded his face. Take all the time you need. They sat in silence for a while, hands linked, both processing the Conversation. Finally, Seungmin's phone buzzed on the nightstand. He checked it and his expression darkened. "What is it?" Natasha asked. "Family meeting. My father wants to discuss last night's attack." He stood, moving to his closet. "You should stay here. Can I ask you something first?" He paused, a shirt in his good hand. "Always. Why did the Zhao family target me? I'm nobody in your world." Something flickered in his eyes. "You're not nobody. You're my wife. That makes you a target and a weakness they'll exploit if they can. So this will keep happening? People will keep trying to hurt me to get to you? I'll protect you. You can't be everywhere at once, and you can't keep taking bullets for me." She stood, moving closer. "There has to be another way." "There isn't. This is my life, Natasha. This is what being married to me means." The weight of that settled over her like a heavy blanket. She'd known he was dangerous, known his world was violent, but understanding it, intellectually, was different from having bullets fly past her head. Seungmin finished dressing, wincing as he pulled on his shirt. "I'll be back by afternoon. Don't leave the penthouse." "I wouldn't know where to go anyway," she said quietly. He kissed her forehead, gentle and lingering. "We'll figure this out, I promise." After he left, Natasha wandered the penthouse restlessly. She tried reading, tried cooking, tried everything to distract herself from the conversation echoing in her head. She'd kissed him. More than that, she'd wanted to keep kissing him, wanted more. The realization terrified her. She was falling for her captor, for the man who'd forced her into this marriage, for someone who'd just admitted to killing people. What did that say about her? Near noon, she heard voices from Seungmin's office. She hadn't known anyone else was in the penthouse. Curiosity pulled her closer, and she pressed her ear against the door. "Father is getting impatient." A man's voice, speaking English with a heavy Korean accent. "The marriage was supposed to secure the debt, nothing more. Now you're treating her like an actual wife." "That's because she is my wife," Seungmin's voice cold and hard. "She's a transaction. When are you going to realize that?" Silence. Then Seungmin spoke again, quieter now. "What are you suggesting?" "The Zhao family wants her dead. Let them have her. Tell your father it was an unfortunate casualty of the war between families. Then marry the Choi daughter like you were supposed to in the first place." Natasha's blood turned to ice. "You're insane," Seungmin said. "I'm practical. This girl means nothing. She's a distraction keeping you from your real responsibilities. The Choi alliance would strengthen our position significantly. Get out." "Seungmin, think about this. I said get out before I throw you out. Injured shoulder or not." Footsteps approached the door. Natasha barely managed to dart away before it opened. A lean, Korean man in an expensive suit emerged, saw her, and his eyes narrowed. "Mrs. Park," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Lovely to see you." He left before she could respond. Natasha stood frozen, her mind racing. The Choi daughter, an arranged marriage. This whole thing was never supposed to be real. She pushed into the office. Seungmin stood by the window, tension radiating from every line of his body. "How much did you hear?" he asked without turning. "Enough." Her voice shook with anger. "The Choi daughter? You were supposed to marry someone else?" "It was discussed. Before. Before you saw my name on a debt form and decided I'd be more entertaining?" She moved closer, fury overriding fear. "This was all a game to you, a way to avoid some arranged marriage you didn't want by forcing me into one instead." "That's not true." "Then what is true? Because that man just suggested feeding me to your enemies so you can marry who you were supposed to marry. And you didn't exactly sound horrified by the idea." Seungmin spun to face her, his eyes blazing. "I told him to get out. What more do you want?" "I want the truth, all of it." Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "Why did you really bring me here, Seungmin?" He stared at her for a long moment. Then his shoulders sagged. "You're right. There was an arrangement with the Choi family, a marriage that would have benefited both organizations. I didn't want it. When your father's debt came through and I saw your name, I saw an out, a way to avoid that marriage by claiming I was already married. So I was convenient. At first, yes. He moved closer, and she backed away. But Natasha, listen to me. That's how it started, but it's not what this became. Somewhere between planning this cold arrangement and actually having you here, something changed. You changed everything. Pretty words from a liar. I'm not lying. Yes, I manipulated the situation. Yes, I used you to avoid an unwanted marriage. But I never expected to actually care about you. To want you to stay, not because I forced you, but because you wanted to. Well, congratulations, she said bitterly. You've achieved the impossible. I was actually starting to fall for you. How pathetic is that? Natasha, no, I'm done being manipulated, done being your convenient excuse. You want to marry the Choi daughter? Fine. Annul this farce and let me go home. She turned to leave, but his hand caught her wrist. I don't want the Choi daughter. I don't want anyone but you. How am I supposed to believe that? Because I'm choosing you over everything else, over my father's plans, over alliances that would make my life easier, over the logical, practical choice. I'm choosing you, Natasha. Doesn't that mean something? It did. That was the problem. It meant everything, even as she wanted it to mean nothing. Let me go, she whispered. If I do, will you come back? I don't know. His hand loosened but didn't. Release entirely. Then I'm not letting go. Not until you give me a chance to prove this is real. They stood there locked in a battle of wills, both breathing hard. Outside, the city glittered in the afternoon sun, oblivious to the two people 40 stories up, trying to figure out if what they had was love or just another lie. The explosion rattled the penthouse windows. Natasha jerked awake from restless sleep, her heart hammering. Another boom echoed through the building, and she heard alarms shrieking somewhere below. She scrambled out of bed just as Xingmin burst through her door, already dressed, a gun in his good hand. We need to move. Now. His voice was clipped, professional. What's happening? My father knows I refused the Choi marriage. He's not happy. He grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the door. He's sent people to convince me otherwise. By blowing up the building? By removing you from the equation. He pulled her into the hallway where guards waited, all armed, all looking tense. If you're gone, I have no excuse to avoid the arranged marriage. Cold terror washed through her. 3 days had passed since their confrontation in his office. 3 days of tense silence, of Xingmin trying to explain and Natasha refusing to listen. She'd been planning to demand he let her go. Now she might not live long enough to make that choice. They rushed toward the elevator, but it wasn't moving. Someone had cut the power. Stairs, Xingmin commanded. They hit the stairwell at a run. Below, Natasha heard footsteps, shouts in Korean, more gunfire. They were trapped between floors with enemies closing in from both directions. Xingmin! His head of security appeared from above, bleeding from a cut on his forehead. Your father's men have secured the ground floor. They're sweeping up. We can't fight our way through. The roof? Blocked. They planned this well. Xingmin's jaw clenched. Natasha watched him calculate odds, measure chances, and she saw the moment he made a decision that terrified him. Take her, he said to the security chief. There's a maintenance tunnel on the 32nd floor. Get her out of the city. Keep her safe. What about you? Natasha demanded. I'm going to talk to my father. End this before more people die. That's suicide. You said yourself he wants me gone. If you go down there alone, he'll kill you. He's my father. He won't kill me. You don't know that. She grabbed his arm. Don't do this. His hand came up, cupping her face with desperate gentleness. If I don't face him now, this never ends. You'll spend the rest of your life running, looking over your shoulder. I won't let that happen. Then I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. It's not your choice. She straightened, meeting his eyes. This whole thing started because you made choices for me, forced me into a marriage I didn't want, kept me prisoner. Well, now I'm making my own choice. I'm not running while you sacrifice yourself. Natasha, please. No. She turned to the security chief. How many men do we have? He looked at Seung-min, who, after a long moment, nodded. 12, against 30 of your father's soldiers. Then we better be smart about this. Natasha looked at Seung-min. You said your father wants to remove me so you'll accept the Choi marriage. What if we remove that option entirely? What are you talking about? Announce publicly that we're staying married. Make it so high profile that killing me would bring unwanted attention to the organization. Your father's smart. He won't risk exposure. Seung-min stared at her. That would work once, but he'd just wait until things died down and try again. Not if we have leverage. She was thinking fast now, pieces clicking together. You've been in this organization your whole life. You must know things. Have evidence of operations that could bury your father if they came to light. Use that. Tell him if anything happens to me, everything goes to the FBI. That would destroy the entire organization. Would you rather they destroy us? She grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. You told me you were choosing me over everything else. Prove it. Really prove it. For a long moment, the stairwell was silent except for the distant sounds of fighting. Then Seung-min smiled, and it was the most genuine smile she'd ever seen on his face. You're terrifying, he said, and brilliant. I'm desperate. She kissed him quickly. Now, how do we make a public announcement from a stairwell? We don't. He pulled out his phone. We do it from the one place my father can't touch, his own office. The plan was insane. They fought their way down 12 floors, Seung-min's guards taking out his father's men with practiced efficiency. Natasha stayed in the center of the group, unarmed but somehow not useless. She called out warnings when she heard footsteps, pointed out security cameras they needed to avoid, even grabbed a fire extinguisher and used it on an attacker who got too close. By the time they burst into his father's office on the 25th floor, they were down to 8 guards, all injured, all exhausted. Seung-min's father sat behind his massive desk, unsurprised by their entrance. He was older than Natasha expected, his hair more gray than black, but his eyes held the same cold calculation as his son's. Seung-min, he said in perfect English, I'm disappointed. You were supposed to be smart enough to let the girl go. I am smart. Smart enough to know you're wrong about this. Seung-min moved to stand beside his father's desk, and Natasha saw what he was doing, positioning himself between cameras that dotted the office, cameras that fed to the organization's secured network. I'm not marrying the Choi daughter. I'm staying married to Natasha. That's not your decision. It is, because I'm taking over. The room went dead silent. Even the guards stopped moving. Seung-min's father stood slowly. You're challenging me. I'm replacing you. You've become reckless, father. This attack, trying to kill my wife in our own building, risking exposure over a personal grudge. The other families are already questioning your judgment. I built this organization from nothing. And I'm grateful, but it's time to step aside. Seung-min pulled out his phone, held it up so his father could see the screen. I've just sent files to 5 different locations. Bank accounts, real estate holdings, operations that would interest federal prosecutors. If anything happens to me or Natasha, those files go public automatically. His father's face went white with rage. You'd destroy everything? Only if you force me to. Seung-min's voice was steady. Walk away now. Retire with your reputation intact, or keep fighting and watch everything burn. You're choosing her over your family? I'm choosing a future over the past. He reached back, not looking away from his father, and Natasha took his hand. She's my family now. The older man looked between them, his expression cycling through rage, to calculation, to something that might have been respect. Finally, he sat back down. You're more like me than I thought, he said quietly. Ruthless when it matters. I learned from the best. The Choi family won't be happy. They'll survive. I'll make sure they're compensated for the broken arrangement. Seung-min's grip on Natasha's hand tightened. But Natasha stays. That's not negotiable. His father studied them for a long moment. Then he nodded once. Fine, but don't expect my blessing. I don't need it. I just need you to call off your men and let us leave." The older man picked up his phone, made a call in rapid Korean. Within minutes, the sounds of fighting in the building stopped. The sudden silence was almost worse than the chaos had been. "Go," his father said, "before I change my mind." They left, Seung-min's remaining guards surrounding them as they finally made it to the ground floor and out into the Los Angeles morning. The sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Natasha breathed in the free air and felt something in her chest unlock. "Where do we go now?" she asked. Seung-min looked at her, and in his eyes, she saw exhaustion and relief and something deeper. "Anywhere you want. You're not my prisoner anymore, Natasha. You're my partner. My choice. My everything." "Your everything is a very big responsibility." "I know." He pulled her close, careful of his still healing shoulder. "Think you can handle it?" She kissed him, there on the sidewalk with the sun rising and guards trying not to watch. Kissed him like she'd wanted to for weeks, deep and thorough and full of promise. "I guess we'll find out," she said against his lips. They found a safe house in the hills, a small cabin far from the city and the organization in his father's reach. For 3 days, they did nothing but rest and heal and learn each other without the weight of forced marriage hanging over them. Seung-min's shoulder improved. Natasha's nightmares faded, and slowly, carefully, they built something real. "Tell me about Kenya," he said one night, lying beside her in the cabin's single bed. So she did. Told him about growing up in Nairobi, about her mother's cooking and her father's stories, about the red earth and wide skies, and the feeling of home she'd lost when they moved to America. "I'd like to see it someday," he said, "if you'll show me." "Really, really, I want to know everything about you, where you came from, who you were before I forced you into my world." "You're part of my world now, too," she pointed out. His hand found hers in the darkness. "Is that okay?" "Ask me tomorrow." She rolled toward him, pressing close. "Right now, just kiss me." He did, slow and deep and perfect. And for the first time since this nightmare began, Natasha felt completely safe. 6 months later, Natasha stood in front of a mirror in a dress she'd actually chosen herself. White silk that hugged her curves before flowing to the floor, simple and elegant in hers. Behind her, Ishi adjusted the dress's train, tears already streaming down her face. "Stop crying or you'll make me start," Natasha said. "I can't help it. My best friend is getting married, again, but this time for real." As she grabbed her hands, "Are you sure about this? I know he's changed, but after everything he put you through, I'm sure." And she was. The past 6 months had transformed everything. Seung-min had kept his word. He'd taken over the organization and immediately started moving it toward legitimate business. It wasn't perfect. There were still gray areas, still dangerous moments. But he was trying. More importantly, he'd given her freedom. Real freedom. She'd gotten a new phone, reconnected with friends, even started working again at a small creative agency that didn't ask questions about her 6-month absence. She lived with Seung-min by choice now, not force. They'd moved out of the penthouse into a real home with a garden and neighbors and normalcy. And every day, he proved he was different from the boy who'd bullied her, different even from the man who'd forced her into marriage. "You really love him," as she said wonderingly. "I really do, which is insane considering." "Considering he kidnapped you?" "Technically, I signed the papers willingly." "With a gun to your father's head." Natasha laughed. "Okay, yes, it's completely crazy, but somehow it worked out." A knock at the door interrupted them. Min Seo, Seung-min's sister, poked her head in. Over the months, she and Natasha had become close, bonding over shared frustration with the organization and love for the same stubborn man. "It's time," Min Seo said, her smile wide. "And my brother is pacing like a trapped animal out there. I think he's more nervous than the first wedding." "The first one didn't count," Natasha said firmly. "This one definitely does." Min Seo hugged her. "Welcome to the family. The real family this time." They walked out to the garden behind Seungmin's, their home. It was small, intimate, just close friends and a few family members who'd supported Seungmin's decision to change the organization. His father wasn't there. That bridge remained burned, but Seungmin didn't seem to mind. The aisle was lined with flowers, Kenyan orchids that Seungmin had somehow tracked down, mixed with Korean chrysanthemums, a blend of both their worlds. At the end, standing under an arch covered in white roses, Seungmin waited. He wore a simple black suit, his hair styled back, his face clean-shaven, but it was his expression that made Natasha's breath catch. He looked at her like she was the sun and he'd been living in darkness his whole life. She walked toward him. No father to give her away this time. Her father watched from the crowd, finally sober after months of rehab that Seungmin had quietly paid for. They'd rebuilt, their relationship slowly, and while it wasn't perfect, it was healing. "Hi," she said when she reached Seungmin. "Hi." He took her hands, and she felt them trembling slightly. "You're beautiful." "You're nervous." "Terrified. What if you change your mind?" "Not a chance. You're stuck with me now." The officiant, a friend of Min Seo's, began the ceremony, but Natasha barely heard the words. She was too focused on Seungmin's face, on the way he looked at her like she was his entire world. When it came time for vows, he cleared his throat. "I wrote something," he said, "but now that you're standing here, it all seems inadequate." "Try anyway," she said softly. He took a breath. 10 years ago, I was a stupid kid who hurt you because I didn't know how to handle what I felt. I was cruel when I should have been kind. I tore you down when I should have built you up. I wasted years we could have spent as friends. Maybe more." His voice grew stronger. 8 months ago, I forced you into a marriage you didn't want. I took away your choice, your freedom, everything that mattered. I told myself it was necessary, that I had good reasons. But the truth is, I was selfish. I wanted you in my life and didn't care how I got you there. Natasha's eyes stung with tears. But somehow you saw past all of that. You saw the person I could be instead of the monster I was. You challenged me, fought with me, refused to give up on the idea that I could change. And you were right. With you, I'm better, stronger, more human. He squeezed her hands. So here's my vow. I promise to choose you every single day. Not because I have to, not because you're trapped, but because you're the best thing that ever happened to me. I promise to protect you, but also to set you free when you need space. I promise to love you not just with passion, but with patience and kindness, and all the things I never learned growing up. His voice dropped to a whisper. I promise to spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of the chance you gave me. Thank you for staying. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for loving me anyway. Natasha couldn't hold back the tears anymore. That was beautiful. Your turn, he said with a small smile. She hadn't written anything formal, but words came anyway. I'm not going to pretend this was a normal love story. You literally kidnapped me and forced me to marry you. That's not romantic. It's not something I'd recommend to anyone. People laughed and she smiled through her tears. But somehow, in the middle of that nightmare, I found something real. I found a man who would take bullets for me, who would defy his entire family to keep me safe, who would burn down his whole world rather than let me go. She reached up, touching his face. You're not perfect, Seungmin. You're still too controlling sometimes. You still have a terrible habit of making decisions without asking me first. You still carry so much darkness from your past that some days I wonder if you'll ever be free of it. His eyes searched hers. But you're trying. Every day you try to be better, and that's all I need. So here's my vow. I promise to keep challenging you when you're wrong. I promise to stand beside you when you're right. I promise to love both the man you are and the man you're becoming. And I promise that this time, I'm choosing you too. Freely, completely, forever. The officiant barely got through the rest of the ceremony before they were kissing, deep and passionate and full of everything they'd been through together. Cheers erupted around them, but Natasha barely heard. She was too focused on the man holding her, the man who'd started as her worst nightmare and become her greatest love. The reception was simple, held right there in the garden. Natasha's father gave a toast that made everyone cry, talking about second chances and forgiveness. Min Seo told embarrassing stories about Sungmin's childhood, as she demanded to know all the details Natasha had been too embarrassed to share. As the sun set and string lights came on overhead, Seungmin pulled Natasha onto the small dance floor. They swayed together, his arms around her waist, her head on his good shoulder, the one without bullet scars. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That this is crazy, that I'm crazy, that somehow, against all odds, we made this work. Any regrets?" She pulled back to look at him. "Hundreds, but not about this, not about us." "Good." He kissed her forehead. "Because I'm never letting you go. Promise?" "Promise." They danced until the stars came out, until the last guests left, until it was just the two of them in the garden. Seungmin led her inside, up to their bedroom, and made love to her slowly, tenderly, like they had all the time in the world. Because they did. They had forever now. Not the forever forced on them by contracts and debts and violence, but the forever they'd chosen. The forever they'd fought for. The forever that started with a nightmare and ended with this perfect, impossible love. Later, lying in bed with moonlight streaming through the windows, Natasha traced the scar on his shoulder. "Tell me something you've never told anyone," she said. Seungmin was quiet for a moment. Then, "That day in high school when I poured milk on your presentation, you ran out of the classroom crying, remember?" She nodded. "I followed you, watched you sitting in the hallway trying to clean the papers, trying not to cry, and I felt sick. I knew I'd gone too far, knew I was becoming exactly what my father was, but I didn't know how to stop, didn't know how to be anything else." He turned to look at her. "I've regretted that moment every day since. If I could go back and change one thing in my life, it would be that. I'd sit down beside you in that hallway and apologize. I'd help you clean the papers. I'd be the person I should have been all along." "You can't change the past," Natasha said softly. "I know, but I can make the future better, starting right now." He kissed her, and she tasted promise in that kiss. Promise of better days, of real love, of a life built on choice instead of force. 3 years later, Natasha stood in the same garden, watching Seungmin push their daughter on a swing. Their daughter had his dark eyes and her smile, a perfect blend of both their worlds. She squealed with delight as the swing went higher, and Seungmin laughed, the sound free and genuine. As she sat beside Natasha on the porch, her own baby sleeping in her arms. "I still can't believe this is your life," she said. "From forced marriage to this? Neither can I, sometimes." Natasha watched her husband and daughter, her heart full, but I wouldn't change it. "Not even the kidnapping part?" "Especially not that, because it led to this." And it was true. Every terrible moment, every fight, every bullet and explosion and terror-filled night had led to this perfect afternoon. To a man who'd learned to be gentle. To a love that had survived everything thrown at it. To a family built from ashes and determination and the stubborn belief that people could change. Seungmin looked over and caught her watching. He smiled, that same smile from their second wedding day. The one that said she was his son. Then he scooped up their daughter and carried her back to the porch, both of them laughing. "Mommy, did you see how high I went?" their daughter demanded. "I saw. You were so brave." "Like you," Seungmin said, kissing Natasha's temple. "She gets it from you." Their daughter ran off to play, and Seungmin sat beside Natasha, taking her hand. The same hand that wore the same ring from that forced wedding day. She'd never replaced it. It had become a symbol not of captivity, but of transformation. "Happy?" he asked. "Incredibly. Good. Because you're stuck with me forever." Forever sounds perfect. And it was. There forever. Hard-won and real and absolutely worth every terrible moment it took to get there. If You enjoyed this love story of transformation and second chances. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more romantic tales. Tell us in the comments which moment made your heart race the most. We love hearing from you, and your support helps us bring you more stories like Natasha and Seungmin's incredible journey from enemies to soulmates.